1078 officer in need.
What's up, guys? It's Matt from the 1078 Project. Hey, if you're new to the organization, a little bit about us. The 1078 Project is a non-profit organization that's been founded and developed by law enforcement officers who have been involved in critical incidents and officer-involved shootings. Our goal at the 1078 Project is to provide mental, spiritual, and practical support to law enforcement officers as they navigate the difficult times surrounding an officer-involved shooting. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode, and I'll see you on the other side, boys. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is a police officer in Texas. He holds the position of sergeant, and he's the founder of Two Cops, One Donut. Today's guest is Erik Lavigne. What's up, Erik? Welcome into the podcast.
Hey, brother. How's it going? Appreciate it.
Pretty good. Your studio looks fantastic. I like it a lot.
Thank you very much. It was my man cave prior to me starting my own podcast, which included a lot of Star Wars stuff, guns, military memorabilia, and a little bit of Dragon Ball Z stuff. So I'm a nerd and a military guy. So
yeah, I love it. We're both grinding with the donuts on everything. So
I know. Retro Rifle, if you're not familiar, they actually sent me this shirt to advertise for them. All of their shirts have guns hidden on them, except this one. They saw that, my podcast is Two Cops, One Donut. So they sent this out and it's got bullets as sprinkles. So that is how
what's the name of it? Retro Rifle?
Retro Rifle, yeah.
All right, I'll have to follow them on Instagram after we're done.
Yeah, man. Check them out. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. If you like Hawaiian shirts, most of their stuff is Hawaiian shirt style. And then, like I said, they got guns hidden in the pattern, which makes it more fun.
Yeah, that's a whole lifestyle, the Hawaiian shirt thing. So,
oh, yeah. The Boogaloo movement, baby.
Yeah, it's a representation of who you are.
It is.
But I'm happy to have you on the podcast. I've listened to a couple of your episodes. You kind of do the same thing that I do.
Yeah, a little different, but yeah. Yeah,
we get to ever hear what your story is, who you are and what got you here. So
I gotcha. So for me, I've had, it's kind of one of the things that I like to touch on with people that I interview too, the humanizing part of the officer. And why that's important is because anything that comes out of my mouth after you hear why I became a cop will have more relevance, more buy-in. Or you can say, well, can you swear on your podcast, by the way?
Yeah, man.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I'll censor myself if not. But they'll basically see if you're full of shit. And I think, people, especially other cops, when they're hearing your story, we're human lie detectors, so our BS meter is very good. So I think getting that humanizing part's very important to get that buy-in with whatever comes out of my mouth after that. So for me, I grew up in Flint, Michigan. Don't drink the water if you're familiar with that. So kind of grew up in the hood, and, with that, cops were not very well liked where I was. And I had an incident when I was about 12. We were playing basketball in the street. I had one of those new basketball hoops, and this is going to date me a little bit, but that you could roll out into the road. People didn't have those then, so I was very fortunate to have that. And the rim didn't have a spring on it. The backboard was made of fiberglass. When you play on them, like if you're used to playing on a real court and all that, like they suck. But when you're a kid, like you get to play basketball wherever. It was pretty cool. So we get that, and cop comes down the road with his partner. They're riding 2-man, and we see him coming, so we stop. I live on a dead-end street. That's an important detail. And the driver's side officer gets out. He says, throw me the rock. And I was like, oh, shit, they're going to play basketball with us. Like, that's different, because the cops don't really ever interact with us. So throwing the basketball, and my man pulls out a knife and stabs my ball. His partner throws my hoop down to the ground, cracking my fiberglass. Yeah. And was like, we told you not to play basketball on the street. And I'm like, you never talked to me ever. I don't know what I didn't know what he was referring to. And it had to be somebody else on one of the other streets, but it wasn't us. And the reason I knew it wasn't us, because we're one of the only dead end streets over there. There's no through traffic. So we don't really get a lot of cars. And I lived more towards the last quarter of the street. So that's when I made it up in my mind that I hated police. And here's where the story gets a little deeper. My dad's a cop in Texas. where I now currently live and am a police officer in the DFW area. I won't say my department because general orders and all that stuff for all my other cops. Yeah, you guys understand. I'll keep them separate, but just know it's in the DFW. It's one of the 12 largest departments in the nation. So you'll figure it out real quick. So I call my dad and I tell him the story, and I'm like, Dad, I get it. You're good. You're a good cop, but I can't stand police. And that was the rhetoric around all my friends anyway. They, it was cool to not like the police as a kid. You're a rebel, anarchist, whatever you want to call it. And I was on the border. I had crappy friends that did crappy things, and I did crappy things too. And always
was your dad living in Texas at that point? Some reason your parents were separated?
Yeah, they had never married. So basically, a little quick backstory. Mom and dad got together, broke up. They were together less than a year. Mom figured out she was pregnant a few months later, and he had already moved to Texas. So he came back. They tried to make it work for about a year. They just not compatible people. So I would visit during the summers, come down, see my dad. Overall, it was a good relationship as far as that was concerned. My mom never really badmouthed my dad, and vice versa. So
kudos to them, man.
Yeah. So, I had a great stepdad. I called him dad too. So just it took me a while to realize that, though. When you're a kid, you're not my real dad. I never said that to him, but I thought it all the time. Yeah. Like I said, I was in a bad place. I was surrounded by, I was raised by my friends in the street for the most part. And my dad said something to me that it took anchor. It anchored itself back in the brain. I didn't realize it, but he said, listen, you can either be a part of the solution or you can be a part of the problem. And I would say when I got to about my senior year, I really knew what my calling was. Like, I kind of grew up a little bit. I'm still very immature. Fart jokes and some kid getting hit in the nuts, like all that stuff, it still makes me laugh to this day. So I never really did grow up.
I was about to say, have you been in a police BFO before?
Yeah.
I've never been in a report writing room of a police department. We're all still giggling about fart jokes.
Oh, absolutely. So I don't want to come across like I had this epiphany and became this mature individual. Like, I can't believe that I get to do what I do for a living with the way my brain works. So anyway, it stuck. And then 9/11 happened as I was graduating high school, 2001. And I had just started my first semester of college, managed to somewhat get on playing a little baseball and stuff like that. Nothing, I wasn't a pro or anything. So
what were you going to college for?
Criminal justice.
Okay.
I knew that I wanted to be in law enforcement. I just didn't know what aspect. I didn't know if I want to be an FBI agent or, you have all these ideas and wasn't quite sure. So as I go through that, I wasn't used to that type of freedom and I ruined it. I partied too hard really early and realized that like I can't keep going to school because I'm getting bad grades and all that stuff. So I drop out and I had to work. So I'm painting houses for my uncle's business down by Detroit. And, I have another little epiphany. He's like, you know what? I don't need to be a cop because this is good money. I was making, I think I made like in 1 week on a job, I made like almost $3,500. And I was like, oh man, this is great.
That is pretty good, man.
Yeah. And then the longer I did the job, I realized all of the people that worked with me started in my same age range, but the people that worked around me are now in their mid 40s and they still don't have a pot to piss in. They don't have anything to their name. If anything medical happens, they're complaining because they don't have health insurance. You don't really get health insurance for that type of stuff. And your savings, and then the winter times in Michigan, like all of these factors started coming to head. And I'm like, I got to go back to, it's not so much about the money. I got to do where my heart is pulling me. And my heart was pulling me to service somehow. And I needed an out. I wanted to finish college and I wasn't old enough, or I was old enough to be a cop, but it was really hard in Michigan to become a cop without having put yourself through an academy. Yeah. No departments were really sponsoring anybody. Yeah. So I didn't have the money for that.
Which is crazy because now it's like everybody's getting sponsored. There's like 6 people in a class. Those people have 4 job offers by the time they graduate.
Right. Oh,
it's like
the longer
2003, 2004, that was a super competitive time for law enforcement.
right. And the longer this, I'll tell you about what Michigan's currently doing that's still screwing the cops over. But so I decided, I did want to, the 9/11 when that happened, I was like, I still want to serve my country too. So I joined the Air Force. Looking at all the branches, I was like, who's got the best police program? It was the Air Force and the Navy, and I don't like swimming. So it was a pretty easy choice for me. So I take the ASVAB test, qualify to do, I think I scored like an 88, which is really good for the ASVAB. And you qualify to do just about everything. And I wanted to be a cop for them, which you only need a 35. And the recruiter was not happy. He's like, no. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. He's wanting me to do like linguistics and work on airplane computer systems and all that stuff. I was like, that's boring. I don't want to do any of that. I want to learn how to be a police. So that's what I did. And that's what got the snowball effect going. Joined the Air Force, finished my degree, got out after my 4 years honorably, jumped into the reserves, but as a safety net, and then got a police gig up in Michigan, Saginaw, Michigan. I applied all over the nation, just happened to be Michigan first that hired me. And when you're getting out of the military, it's scary because that's a huge safety net. They, provide you everything. I mean, insurance, food, clothing, everything. And they give you your schedule. You always know what's going on when you can. So to leave that institutionalized lifestyle that you're used to, like, it's scary. So I did. I took the first police job I got. As I got comfortable there, after a couple of years, I was like, this sucks. There's no room for mobility. It's a small department. I'm not getting the satisfaction out of police work I knew I could get if I was at a different department. So then I started looking again, and that's when I applied down to Texas and found this job.
What was Dad saying to you as you told him that you were interested in law enforcement? Was he pushing you? Was he pulling you back? Was he saying,
never
go be a fireman like you hear from every other cop?
Never one way or the other. My dad's always been like, make your own decision. Like he would answer my questions honestly. I'm like, what's really cool about it? And he's like, that's a good question. He's like, but he'd guide me in. He goes, why don't you ask me what really sucks? And then he'd go down that path. So then I'm like, oh, okay, getting stuck over and doing, seeing some of the worst. And when you're young, you're like, that's the stuff I want to see.
Yeah.
And then when you get older and you've been in this job a lot longer, you're like, man, I'm way too desensitized to a lot of things.
Yeah. So when you left the military, I'm guessing you became some type of like MP?
Yeah, I was security forces, which is a military police for the Air Force.
Okay. Did your like credentials transfer over? Did you have to test into did you have to go to the academy or?
So my first one that I went to, the one in Michigan, they gave me an abbreviated academy, which was like 6 weeks. And honestly, that is a bad move because military policing and civilian policing are totally different beasts. And there's a lot of assumptions that military police have all the same training. They don't, especially when it comes to constitutional rights, civil rights, things of that nature, because on a base, you don't have all that protection. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you do, but you don't. Like, I can pull your car over because something looks fishy to me on the base. I don't need a reason. Yeah. You're on a military installation. You try that in the civilian world, you're going to get hemmed up pretty quick.
I just taught a course, like a police resilience course at Whitman Air Force Base. It's where they keep like the bombers.
Okay.
And the guy that was teaching before me was an instructor for like military police. And he's like talking about the stuff that they can do. He's like, yeah, you just go in their house. And I'm thinking to myself like, no, you don't just go in their house. Like there's like, it's a huge disconnect. Like there's a big difference between the military side of law enforcement and then the civilian side of law.
You get a lot of great fundamentals. You use of force continuum is all there. Tasing, pepper spray, tactics, things of that nature. But when it gets down to the stuff that really is going to get you in trouble, civil rights, constitutional rights, policies and procedures are totally different. Chain of command works a little different. When you're the officer on scene, like it's your scene. Mm-hmm. Unless you're relieved by your sergeant. But in the military, it could be the more senior officer could take over, and you how that goes. Like conflict can happen really quick if somebody comes in with an ego. So
yeah,
just different.
So the academy was 6 weeks long. Was it what you would expect? Like, was it like a normal police academy, or
It was
was it kind of
garbage.
just rushing you through everything just so you can get done? Or
It was like, foot stomping on questions like, what's the answer to this? And they're leading you, pencil whipping. It was garbage. It was absolute garbage. It set me up for failure. Luckily, that never came.
yeah, I was going to ask how the field training process went after
The field training process was way better. It was 4 months, and you were with a seasoned person. I got lucky. I was with a very seasoned officer. I think he'd been a cop for like 20 something years, and he was great. And he's the guy. My very first car I pulled over. He's like, "Hey, let's just start simple. Do a traffic stop." Cool. He's like, "All right, whatever one you want." Like, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I'm like on the base again in my head, and I see a car. And I'm like, that one looks good. And I just pull that car over, and he's like, "All right, before you go up there, what did we pull him over for?" I goes, "Because you said to pull a car over." He's like, "Jesus Christ." Shakes his head. He's like, "Stay
go up
here."
there and apologize.
He's like, "Stay here." He goes up there. He's like, tells him, must have told him like, "Wrong car. Sorry. You're good to go." And then he comes back and he's like, "What did they teach you in the academy?" And so I told him basically the same thing I told you. He's like, "Oh my God." And he's dumbstruck, and we go through, but he was prior military as well. So that's where we really connected. So he helped me out, and we got everything squared away. But if I hadn't got him as a FTO, who knows how bad it could have been. My police career could have been over that first year.
Yeah. So how big was the department in Michigan?
Like 40. It was small. Wasn't very big.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Very small. Not a lot of calls.
As a new guy, that has to be pretty intimidating to walk into a department that small, because
for
it's
me,
like cliquey in law enforcement.
Well, coming from the military background, I was like, you learn to force your way into that. Like that didn't bother me. So coming in, walking through the door, and I'm like, "What's up, new guy here?" Like but I'm an extrovert anyway. So it was not hard for me. Made friends pretty quick, and is what it is. It was fun. I didn't have a problem. So,
do you remember your first hot call?
Yeah. So first hot call, it was actually self-initiated. So I am running radar by school, and that's usually how you start out when you're on your own. And so see a car go by, 72 in a school zone. I'm like, in a 20. I'm like, holy, and this is where I learned very early in my career not to build a story up in your head. So I go up to this car, get up to the window, guy pulls over, and I'm ready to mother F him right then and there. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And as I'm about to chastise this man, I see the handle of a butcher knife coming out of his back.
Holy cow.
He's right around the corner from the hospital, and he's trying to get to it. And I'm like, goo, like, holy cow. And he's wearing a white shirt, and I don't see any blood. I'm like, okay, I know self-aid buddy care and stuff from the military and whatnot. I'm like, okay, the knife is holding everything in place. We're good right now. And as that's happening, another car comes up behind my cruiser and screech and halt. And this lady gets out. "Oh my God, is he okay? Is he okay?" And I'm like, "Who's that?" And he goes, "Oh, that's my wife. She's the one that stabbed me." And I'm like, so now I'm drawing my gun out. I'm like, "What the hell? Get on the ground, get on the ground." And he's like, "Don't shoot my wife, don't shoot my wife." And like this is getting hectic. And I'm like, I'm a rookie and I've never faced anything like this. And I don't know what the hell to do. So I'm like, "Can you get to the hospital? Do you think?" Like I'm asking the guy that as I'm pointing a gun at his wife. And he's like, yeah, I think I can. And he's like, "Don't shoot my wife, don't shoot my wife." I was like, "Get in the back of my car." And so I command her up, make her open the rear seat, get in, shut the door. I haven't searched her at all. Her car is running with the door open on the road. I jump in my car and I follow him to the hospital. I haven't searched her. We get there and the Sarge meets me there, and I'm like, he's like, "What's going on? What do you got? Where can I help you?" That's what he says. I said, "This is what happened." I was like, come up to the car and he had a butcher knife hanging out of his back, and then this car comes screeching up, and it's his wife, and she's the one that stabbed him. And he's like, "Holy cow, slow down." He's like, "One thing at a time. Where can I help you right now?" I was like, she needs to be searched. I haven't searched her. She's in the back of the car. He's like, okay, I got that. You go with the victim. All right, cool. So I go with him. They get him in. I grab his ID, but I let them take him up to the room. I'll go talk to him when things calm down with him. So I got his ID, and then I go back to the sergeant. He's like, I searched her. She's good. She started giving me some of the story. He's like, what else do you need? I was like, well, she stabbed him, so she's going to jail. We know that. And he's like, okay, she's going to jail. Cool. What about our victim? He's like, well, he's being seen right now. It doesn't look critical. And I got his ID here. We'll run him for warrants, see if he's got warrants, see if she's got warrants, do all that stuff. And he's like, all right, I like where your process is going. He's like, anything else? He goes, no, I think that's it. He goes, all right, I'm going to take her down to the jail. And just as that happens, another unit shows up. And he's like, better yet, he'll take her to jail. I was like, all right, cool. He's like, anything else before I go? He's like, we'll debrief this at the end of shift. I was like, all right. And as we're both all about to part ways, I was like, oh, her car's in the middle of the road running with the door wide open by the school. He goes, holy shit. Okay, I'll go get that. So we tow her.
That was pretty good critical thinking, I think.
Yeah. So he goes, tows her car, and we debrief afterwards. And I really liked the way as I'm a sergeant now, I really liked how he handled this with a very young me. And he says, all right, Lavigne, sit down. He's like, all right, you had a little bit of a shit show. I was like, yeah, I would say so. He goes, do you think it went well? I said, well, nobody got hurt. I didn't have to shoot anybody, and I didn't really have to use any force. I was like, yeah, I think it went as well as it could. And he's like, okay. He's like, what else? I think it could have went a lot better. And he's like, all right, this is what I like. So he's letting me work it out in front of him instead of just telling me what I did wrong. And he goes, okay, how could you have done better? I said, well, now that I've had time to process it, I shouldn't have let him drive. He goes, that was the number one thing I was going to suggest. He's like, what could you have done different? I was like, I probably should have just called the ambulance there and waited and dealt with the wife. And he goes, okay. Yeah, I like that. How would you deal with the wife? I was like, well, I should have just waited for backup before I tried to put her in the back of my car without ever touching her. He's like, yeah. He's like, we don't like to put uncuffed suspects in the back of our vehicles. That's a good move. I was like, all right. And he's like, anything else? I was like, I said I probably should have had somebody stick around with the vehicle too. And had that towed. He goes, perfect. He goes, it doesn't look like I need to supervise anything right here for this. And he's like, because you figured it out. And I was like, all right. He's like, you're a young cop. He's like, and you're eager and you want to do all these things. He's like, I'm going to support that, but let's use this as a learning opportunity to start slowing things down and thinking them through, because you have the knowledge. Now you just got to learn to apply it.
Yeah, I had a boss a lot like that when I got my first dog. It was like my first big step in my career,
Yeah.
And he never gave you an answer. Like he would always, if I'd call him, hey boss, this is what I got. Okay, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
There was never like, hey, do this or do that. It was always, you tell me.
Yep.
And there may be like some questions that he may push the thought process in one direction or the other direction. But the idea there was that he was teaching me how to critical think.
Yes.
Which, as you know now, being in law enforcement for quite some time, and that's really what our job comes down to. It's who can think the fastest and remain calm when everybody else isn't remaining calm.
Yep.
That's 90% of what our job is. It's not, there are some things that we have to know how to do, shoot, move, TCCC, stuff like that. You need to know those things. But the real main component of our job is that critical thinking, staying calm under pressure. I think those are the things that separate cops from the rest of the world.
Absolutely. And it's, as a sergeant now, the cool part for me is I get to step back and do something I've always wished some other sergeants would have done, instead of the blanket supervision where they try to treat everybody the same because they think that's how supervision is supposed to go, to be fair and equal. You don't want fair and equal supervision. What you want is you to tailor your style for the individual, so your team. And I have found that has been, I always thought that in theory, but now that I've been a sergeant for about a year, I've proved it and the morale is higher. The team camaraderie and unity is higher because I'm tailoring my supervision to them versus just trying to do this blanket supervision.
Yeah, blanket supervision doesn't work, man. Relationship is, in my opinion, where real supervision is defined. If you have a relationship with someone, I can take punishment from somebody that I respect and somebody that I trust. I can take criticism from somebody that I respect and somebody I trust. It's difficult for me to take criticism or punishment from somebody that I don't respect or that I don't trust. And that trust and respect comes through relationship. It comes through, shared hardship, and stuff like that. And I think sometimes, like, most police departments have moved towards that, like, okay, well, there's a blanket type of supervisor and they're all supposed to do the exact same thing. If this guy makes this mistake, the punishment is this. If this guy makes this mistake, the punishment is that.
Yeah.
Man, sometimes the punishment for one guy should be completely different for the punishment of another guy.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That whole money in the bank theory, should mean something. I got days off for not wearing my seatbelt. Like, I don't know, a while back, we had the police department that I work for was going through some big administrative changes, and they brought in a chief from a different area. We had some, command members that were all suing each other. It was a disaster. It wasn't a very good place to work, to be 100% honest. And, I had worked there at that point, I think, for maybe 8 or 9 years. Never been in trouble, been handling a dog at that point for like 5 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Doing a lot of stuff on my own time, obviously training with the dog, going to all these community service events and everything else. And then I get into a car accident and they asked me if I was wearing my seatbelt, and I say no, because that's who I am. I wanted to be honest about it. I could have easily lied about it, obviously, but I tell him no. And this chief's like 4 months into his tenure at the police department and calls me into a meeting and he says, "Hey man, I'm going to give you 3 days off."
Dang.
I know. And my head almost exploded. He's like, "Well, I was going to give you 3 days, but I've talked to some people and I'm only going to give you 1 day off." I'm like, you don't even know me.
Yeah.
You have no clue who I am. You have nothing. You have no clue what I've done for this department, like how much time I've given. And it was one of those times. It was like, you could have just screamed at me and told me I was an idiot.
Yeah.
And I'd have been like, "You're right. I'm an idiot. I'm going to wear my seatbelt from now on." Instead, he goes through this process of giving me days off. And to be 100% honest, I think truthfully, that's kind of where that guy, he didn't last very much longer. He left after like 3 more months. But people were like, if you're going to do that guy like this, like, what are you going to do to me? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Somebody that's got a proven track record, has not been in trouble, like all that. Had you never had a conversation with that person, on paper, this is what I have, which is great. And then if you are doing your due diligence as a leader and somebody that has that type of power, I would expect you to put the same amount of effort that you would do with a suspect or a victim. Talk to that person, find out what was going on, your reasoning behind why you did what you did. Because although it is a policy violation to not wear a seatbelt, it is also, there's justifications for doing what we do sometimes. I'm not supposed to drive on the wrong side of the road, but if it was to avoid traffic and just to temporarily move around, we allow that. Like there's certain things that I may have been getting ready to jump out of the car, so I took my seatbelt off, and then all of a sudden things started going again. It was a dynamic situation, and I got rear-ended by my own guy. Like that happens a lot, so that's understandable. I'm not going to give you a day off.
The long and the short of it was, there's a car that had no plates. We get a lot of stolen cars. I work for a suburb just outside of St. Louis. We get a lot of stolen cars. Car drives by, has no plates on it. I'm like, ooh, that's a good car. Do a U-turn. Take my seatbelt off as I do a U-turn, turn right out in front of a car. It's my fault. I did it. You know what I mean? And
it happens.
I was
That's why it's an
honest about
accident.
it, which I thought was important, to be honest. I could have just simply lied and probably got no punishment, but in this profession, you're supposed to have integrity and morality, and you're supposed to be a good overall person.
Yep.
And it cost me, but yeah, that all that just to say, leadership makes a huge difference in taking a vested interest in your guys. is probably the number one characteristic of leadership, in my opinion.
Yeah, and in the sergeant position in policing, in my opinion, is the most important position. Everybody, it's that conduit between the guys on the ground and the people that start sitting behind desk. Your lieutenant,
administrators.
It's really the first administrator position you get at most police departments. There are some departments where their lieutenants are actively out in the field, but that's very few and far between. So, but the sergeant's the constant. Sergeant has always been out there, should be out there with his people, and kind of leading by example. I'm not saying they're out there generating calls for their troops, but they should be out there amongst them on their calls, seeing how they perform their job, fielding things, and then providing them the tools they need to succeed.
Yeah. How long did you stay in Michigan? Did you say 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah, about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, not long.
Any other calls that stand out to you?
Oh, I've got a million calls.
What was the dynamic like? What was the dynamic like at the area that you were working? What was it like?
Hood.
Pretty high crime?
Yeah, high crime. Yep. And now the area that I'm in now is another one of those high concentrations of, guns, dope, and money. So 3 basic food groups. So that's what we do. We hunt. We're a very proactive unit where I'm at. And our primary goal is to try to prevent violent offenders by getting, the illegal guns off the street. Now it's Texas, so I have to preface with everybody's got a gun. That's not the problem. The problem is the bad guys having the guns, and we find.
Yeah, Missouri's the same way. Missouri's like a little Texas. Our gun laws are loose as a goose.
Yeah.
Everybody has a gun.
Yep. And
every interaction that you have, you stop a car.
Yep. And people are like, well, how do you tell the difference? I'm like, it's not hard. Like, when somebody made an oof, like, oh, I'm a lawful person. I just wasn't properly carrying my gun according to Texas law. Like, one of Texas laws is if your gun's visible from the outside, it has to be in a holster. It can't just be loose. So really? It's a weird law, but that's it. Well, most law abiding people have their gun in a holster. Most of your non-law abiding citizens don't. So that's
tucked in their pocket.
Yeah. So that's a way that we start working these stops. And then let's say you find, a gun that's not in a holster. All right, well, let's go from there. Does he have a criminal history? No. Okay. This probably ain't the guy we're looking for. Does he have an extensive criminal history? And I'm not talking traffic tickets. I'm like, all right, cool. Is he gang affiliated? Oh, he's got an affiliation. Oh, this one's documented. Okay. Yeah. Now we're cruising, so
Texas is a wild place, man. So one of the first guys that I interviewed, I actually think it was the first episode that we ever did, was he's actually now my boss, but he came from Dallas and he was shot in Dallas. He's working like they had like a bunch of robberies that were at this apartment complex. And him and his partner ended up finding the robber. The guy got out, shot him twice. Luckily didn't die, but he almost died. And his stories of Texas are just, the Dallas area were just wild.
Yeah. I try to avoid Dallas. Where I'm at it's a large city with a small town feel, if that makes sense. I think that's the big difference between where I'm at and Dallas. So
yeah, I say that, but St. Louis City is, probably one of the roughest places in the country. It's
oh yeah, you guys were always nightmare. Fighting with Flint, Saginaw, and Detroit, and Michigan for murder capital. That in DC, Baltimore. I remember that growing up all the time, like always seeing St. Louis,
It's a pretty wild place, man.
Yeah.
It's crime ridden, lots and lots of gang activity, lots of stolen cars, lots of violent crime.
And where I'm at now is I'm in more of an affluent area. And you're like, well, you just said it's a high crime area. And I'm like, that's the problem. The affluent area has paid for this like bar district. So it's like a 5 by 10 block of all these streets and a little grid system with bars all over them. And each bar attracts different crowds. You got your honky tonks, you got your vaquero, Mexican cowboy bars, you got your hip hop bars, you've got, college prep TCU bars, you've got your Irish pubs. I mean, it attracts everybody, bikers. And when they get drunk and get around each other, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And when that type of crowd gets there, it also attracts dope dealers because they know that they can sell all night long and nobody's ever going to really find them. It's hard to find them in there. And with dope comes gangs, with gangs comes guns, and it's just the perfect storm where you have a barrel and the fish just keep jumping into it.
Yeah.
And
I work in the area I work is pretty affluent too. There's rough parts of the area that I work, but what we have found is that since it is a relatively affluent area and we're really close to St. Louis, probably within, 30-minute drive of St. Louis City, they just come out here. If you want to do burglaries, well, what better place to do burglaries than the place where people have nice things to steal? If you want to steal cars, what better place to steal cars than the place that everybody leaves their keys inside their cars?
Yeah.
Since it is a nice area, it comes with a bunch of people that don't really realize how close they are to people that want to take everything that they have.
Yeah.
So leads to a lot of, over the last year and a half, after the whole Kia Boy thing started, we had a bond. There were nights that the city I work in would have like 6 cars stolen in a matter of like 5 hours, so they started this little task force that was their only job, is to try and find these dudes that are going around the entire county stealing cars and driving them back to the city, using them in gang stuff, and then person gets their car back from the insurance and it's got gunshots and gun holes in it and everything else. So
we same issues here. We have our auto theft task force. We have our zero tolerance guys. I think they're called like directed response unit now for PC reasons. It's zero tolerance. And my patrol unit has the same mission as our zero tolerance. So it's kind of, we're like a specialized patrol unit. It's kind of neat. It's we get to work out and train the first couple hours a shift, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
And then our sole purpose isn't to answer calls. It's to seek and destroy, like looking for shenanigans.
Yeah, here's the weird thing, man, is what you just said. Shouldn't that be what every police officer does at the beginning of their shift? Shouldn't they train and work out all the time?
I would love for that to happen.
I listen to all these guys like Jocko and all these operators that now have this platform to talk about special operations stuff, which obviously I respect a lot. But they talk about the police and they're like, hey, these guys don't, like, they're undertrained. Mm-hmm. None of them work out. Like, they don't take care of themselves. Like, how do you expect for these people to be successful in the environment that you put them in? Like, in the special operations world, you have this whole spin-up period where you spend months and months and months training and getting ready, and then you deploy for a short period of time, then you come back and you train again. Well, we do the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
We deploy every single day, and we train never.
What irritates me when you have these guys like Jocko and Mike Baker and some of these other guys that have been on Rogan, who's got the largest platform out there, is you are talking about police training when you're not a police officer.
Sorry to interrupt the episode, but we got some big, exciting things happening with 1078. As you guys know, we sell merch, and that's been going pretty well. We decided to drop 2 more t-shirts, one of which I think you guys will think is hilarious. Head over to the website, www.1078project.com. Click the merch button. It will take you to our merch store, where you can purchase a shirt. Just so you guys know, all the proceeds from those shirts, all the profits from those shirts are getting donated back to the nonprofit, and it's a way for us to continue to do the work that we have been doing. Also, we have big news as well. We're having a trivia night. It's on 9/20. If you're looking to attend the trivia night, again, go to the website, www.1078project.com. Go to the events tab, and you can register. All the information that you'll need is there. Guys, this is a really big deal to us. This is the way that we fund all of our operations. If you're a business, you're looking to sponsor the trivia night, again, you can reach out to us, or you can go to the website, to the event tab. All of our contact information will be on there. Hit us up. We'd love to have your support. We've also loved to have you guys at the trivia night. I'll stop talking so we can get back to the episode.
I get that these guys have done some training with cops, but you are not a cop. And so for me, it would be no different than me trying to talk as though I'm a SEAL member, or that because I've trained with some SEALs once in a while, which I have, that,
Slight flex.
Yeah, I know that I somehow know what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to tactics. And I don't know. They're on a different level. But one of the things they fail to mention is when you're in the military, you are a piece of property and you are getting paid no matter what. And you're getting your health insurance no matter what. And if you get hurt, so be it. That's just what it is. You'll be off, but you're getting paid the whole time. That's just the nature of being a military member. Police don't have that. If I get hurt, I only get so many, injury days, and then now you got to do workman's comp. That becomes a huge pain in the butt. It doesn't matter what department you're at. It's universally a pain, and never works out the first time or second time. You have to keep doing things over and over again. It's just part of the game. And you also have, you're expected to do, if they, grappling to me is like the top priority. I think all officers should be minimum of blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And or catch wrestling, judo, something like that. But I think BJJ is the end all be all. So I digress.
Yeah. It's like a diluted judo, no big deal.
I did judo too. So I actually started with judo because it was more prominent. It was an Olympic sport, and you could find it in places, but you could not find jiu-jitsu. I didn't find jiu-jitsu until 2007 when I was stationed in Montana, and then I went crazy. I went for a class and I was like, oh my God, this is it. So judo.
Now it's about the exact opposite. You can't find a judo gym, but you can find jiu-jitsu gyms on every corner.
Well, now it's harder. And the thing I tell people about judo is more realistic in how you start a fight, and jiu-jitsu is how you finish the fight. So judo is going to get them to the ground. And if you get them to the ground the right way, like, they're not going to move.
The fight's probably going to be over.
Yeah, because we're not fighting on mats. We're fighting on the street, and that is a hard landing surface.
You Uchimata somebody onto the concrete, it's going to be a rough day.
Yes. So I'm a big fan of judo. And then I tell people, like, for me, I did jiu-jitsu from like 2006 till 2016. Like, I loved it. I was obsessed. I did judo for like 3 years prior to that. Where I found myself lacking was that 3 to 5 foot distance, that gap before I could close the distance. So I was trying to find something to supplement that. And I did a little bit of Muay Thai. I trained in that for like 3 months. And I was like, I'm just not feeling this as an option for me wearing all the gear that I wear. And then I got into boxing. So I've been boxing the last two years. And that has been my game changer for using force, because I use the boxing to set up the distance closing. And now I feel really comfortable with it. And my hope is, if I ever do, let the mic check fly, mic check 1, 2. And if I ever let the 2-piece go out there, like, and I miss or whatever, typically your opponent is closing the distance on you, and that's what I want anyway. So
So does your department train in like jiu-jitsu for law enforcement or anything like that?
Yes.
So that's what we've fully transitioned to jiu-jitsu for law enforcement.
Yep. We do the Gracie combatives.
We have like 5 instructors. Yep. Luckily I get to be one of them, because grappling is one of my favorite things to do when I have time.
Yeah, we have several instructors, but we also have 5 or 6 black belts on the department. Now, I got like a 2,000 person department I'm talking about here, but Tuesdays and Thursdays at our academy, and then there's another sector. I think we have 6 sectors right now, about to be a 7th sector. And at one of those, I can't remember which one it is, but there's another black belt, 2 black belts that put on classes at lunchtime for anybody that wants to come up and learn. So it's always going on. We always have the training available. We have people available. So it's really good. We do have certified instructors for, Gracie Survival Tactics, which is a great program to get people introduced to, I call it the sport, the grappling. And
like 90% of what we do, I try and tell the guys that that I work with is like 90% of what we do is just getting to a position that you feel comfortable.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, you don't have to learn how to break someone's arm.
Yeah.
Would it be nice for you to know how to break somebody's arm?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great. You know,
Yep.
and if you become interested in it and you want to learn how to break somebody's arm or make them go night-night,
Yeah.
you know, you can come train. But the big thing is I see all these terrible videos on the internet of cops just getting flung around like rag dolls.
Yeah.
And they look like they've never fought a day in their life. Like they never grappled anything ever.
Yep.
I watched one the other day. I don't know. It may have been on your social media, but it's like this bigger girl and this dude's like throwing her on the ground and she's like flailing around. It's a cop.
Yeah.
She's like flailing around on the ground. She just gets like pushed over.
Yeah.
It's like, how
Yep.
are we doing this? How are we putting that person out there?
Yep.
Like first off, it's unfair and super dangerous for her. Like she shouldn't be there. And number two, it's really embarrassing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's the people that we're putting out
Yep.
on the road. That's the level of training and understanding of physical combat that they have. They just get flung around like a rag doll, pushed down.
I tell departments, if you want to lower the use of force and the liability, teach your guys to grapple. Don't make them go to the range more. Don't make them do cultural, cultural sensitivity training. Don't make them do all this stuff. Just teach them how to grapple and keep teaching them.
Yeah.
If you can't provide the facility at your place and the instructors, pay for them to have a membership somewhere. Do your due diligence on that. Don't just let them go to some McDojo that's going to throw, belts at them and teach them techniques that don't really, apply to police work. And that's what I challenge other officers to do. When you do start getting used to grappling, don't let yourself get caught up in learning sports grappling to win tournaments. You need to stick to what applies directly to police work, arm extractions, takedowns, top control, protecting your weapon, stuff like that. Keep your underhooks.
Yeah, we really focus on like getting somebody to knee belly.
Yeah.
And then
Neon belly, baby.
getting hands behind their back from,
or as we call it down here, that neon belly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to get a shirt that has there's a bar in the city of Fort Worth that's very famous. That's where they started doing the line dancing on CMT, the country music television back in the day, called Billy Bob's. And Billy Bob's is basically where, Neon Moon and stuff from like Brooks and Dunn and like, it's classic honky tonk stuff.
Honky tonk music.
Yeah. And so I wanted to get a shirt made that was kind of like a Western theme with that neon sign that says Neon Belly, but you know what I'm talking about. So
yeah, I like it. I like it.
I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, I cannot believe that we're sending people out there to go fight.
Yeah.
And sometimes like I get to see a large portion of, our officers, and sometimes I'm like, man.
Yeah.
Because, we teach the class and it's like, you need like 6 months of this consistently.
Yeah. And then
to have a chance of defending yourself.
And the other part that's frustrating is like, what were your expectations of police work? Like, did you think you're going to be able to talk your way out of everything? That's not realistic at all. You may be at a small department where
sometimes there's physical confrontation.
Yeah. You may be at a department that only handles, 1,000 calls a year. I get that, but the moment it gets real, like, how serious did you take your career? Because I would say you didn't take it very serious if you did nothing to help protect yourself or help protect the citizens that you swore an oath to protect. That gun is not the end all be all, and neither is your pepper spray, taser, or baton. So
yeah, that's the big social media thing too. Is like, why didn't they just tase them? It's like, because it doesn't work.
Yeah. Do you know how often that thing fails?
It doesn't work all the time. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
Especially the newer ones where you're popping multiple different rounds. You got to get 2 good connections.
The 10's awesome, by the way. I like hearing it when it starts up because we have them, and just the fact that 45 feet and it shoots a straight line, like you don't have to. Like, that's pretty good, and you just keep popping until you get a good connection.
Good connection.
Yep.
So you're on normal patrol there, and they allow everybody to work out?
No, just my unit because of the sheer volume of people and the high propensity of victims if there's a shooting. Because you got to remember, like I said, it's like a 4 by 10, 12 block of streets and bars. So we're talking when the bars let out, it's thousands of people in the street. Think of like if you're familiar with Austin 6th Street. when a bunch of people get let out of there. That's one linear street and thousands of people because it's all bars lined up down 6th Street. And they usually have around 45 officers and some mounted units to help and bike units at the end of the night. Well, where I'm at, I'm dealing with a larger scale bar district, and I've got 20 officers and no mounted unit. And when we do have shootings, like, they're bad. So we needed to do something and change it up. So when I got there, they already had the zero tolerance strategy going because of the lieutenant that was there, and he's great. And then when I got there, I started teaching my guys how to do foot patrol, kind of win hearts and minds of the businesses, get them on board. And then at the same time, while you're on foot, looking into cars, which people think you can't do that as an officer. They think you need a search warrant to look at my car. Not from the outside. I don't. No, and you would not believe how many guns with switches, ARs, AK pistols, like all of these things that we're seeing just from the outside of the vehicle. And then we're able to, investigate further. We're not just seeing the gun and then going, okay, we tow the car and do it. No. We're waiting. We're setting up on the vehicle. We're seeing the history of that car. We're checking all of our flock cameras to see where it frequents. Oh, it frequents over here where all these gangs are normally at, and he's down here partying for the weekend. It's likely that the person that was in this car is a gang member. I see gang cut. Like, it just goes, the rabbit hole goes, and we were slaying, guns left and right, just finding all these.
Flock is fantastic.
Oh, Flock's amazing.
Investigative tool.
Absolutely.
I don't know what I think of it as a citizen, but as a police officer, it really helps.
So I've had these discussions. I've actually gone on a couple news programs talking about them when they were new for our department. And that is a concern of mine, is overreach. It's a great tool. I just think it's our job as police to keep ourselves in check so we don't overstep and lose a great tool. So for us, all of our cameras are in public places where if you were a citizen and you had your phone out, you'd have a right to record. So we have a right to record. And then we go further and we tell them that we are not looking into your homes. We're not looking, into your vehicles. We're looking at the outside, the exterior, and we're only reading your plates. And
if I remember correctly, Flock has designed it specifically so it can't see inside your vehicle.
Yes. So that is in doing town hall meetings often, letting them know, hey, this is what the cameras do. Here's where they're at. We tell them the location. I don't care if the bad guys know where they're at, because guess what? We're going to get more of them because they're catching bad guys. And the more they know where they're at, the less likely they're going to be committing crimes in that area. So we put some on speed trailers so we can move them around. Yep, we have mobile
in areas that people avoid.
Yep,
we'll just move the trailer over there.
Yep, the hardline ones are the best, and then the solar power ones I would say are a good second. And then you get your mobiles for when you have special events and things like that, or you have a hot spot. You keep getting a bunch of BMVs in an area. It's nice to get one, at a local high traffic intersection, so then you can start seeing who's in the area during the time of the burglaries and things like that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of LPRs. They're a game changer.
For those of you that are not in law enforcement that may be listening, what we're talking about is a system that reads license plates that drive past a specific camera. So it photographs the vehicle and the license plate, and it logs it for law enforcement. They can go back and search if they had to.
Yep.
So.
And you can basically, if a car is stolen and the plate's been entered as a stolen vehicle, we'll get a warrant hit from Flock saying, hey, this car passed by at this time, and your chances of getting your vehicle back are high. If a kid's kidnapped, we can get a vehicle description out there. It doesn't have to have a plate, but we can get, it's a neon green Charger. All right, cool. Well, Flock, look at all the neon green Chargers that have passed in the last 10 minutes. And then now you've got an idea of direction of travel and all that. And then you can get a plate. This rabbit hole goes deep.
Yeah. And listen, let's be 100% honest. There's probably tons of other governmental agencies that have been doing this for far longer than local law enforcement.
Oh, absolutely. This was not a new technology by any means. It started to be adopted by local law enforcement, and it was dumbed down and, less intrusive, which I'm okay with. That's fine.
Me too.
But I love the fact that it is, because I was a property crimes detective at the time that this stuff started coming out. So for me, I was there during the transition, and
it's a game changer.
And people, like, I had other detectives like, how are you solving so many cases? And I'm like, I adopted this technology. Like, we've got it and nobody's taught us how to use it. So I took it upon myself to go and learn and go to our real-time crime center and then see all the capabilities we had throughout the city that nobody really trained us on. And I just started killing it. And then I was like, I'm telling everybody that would listen. So I love the tech.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It does help out as an investigative tool. It's leaps and bounds. I think the government has done a fairly good job of limiting. I know that they just changed a lot of the I don't know what the court rulings on like cell phone tower, like phone dumps and
Right.
Like waypoints and what's the what do they call it? Oh my goodness. Where you can like set a certain parameter and if there's a cell phone and within that parameter.
Oh, the geofences and stuff.
Yes, geofence search warrants. They just kind of changed some of the stuff around geofence search warrants, trying to limit private citizens being intruded on by their government. But so they've set out certain protections for the public, which I think is a good thing. And I think in law enforcement, would it be fantastic to have access to every bit of information that we want right when we want it? Yeah. But at the same time, as a citizen, it's like, maybe there should be some little
checks and balances.
Yeah, there should be some type of check and balance.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I mean? So let's finish off your career in Michigan. So you do 3 years there. Were you on patrol the whole time there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Nothing fancy. It was the second half of my career that was way better.
Yeah. What was it like going from like MP to law enforcement on the public side? Was it like shell shock? I'm guessing you were exposed to far more on the civilian side than on the military side.
It wasn't shell shock. It was unleashing. It was like, oh my God, now I get to do all the things that I was hoping to do all the time. You got to do it at a limited scale for the military. It's like being in a small town that nothing happens. Do things happen on the base, thefts, domestics, suicides, all of that. I was exposed to all of that as an MP, but they're few and far between. It didn't happen as near as often. Now, working in a big city, I'll go to Michigan, working there. Now it's happening more frequently. Still not near as much as I was hoping, just because how small we were. And then when I got to Texas, that's when everything just really started to open up for me. I was like, there's opportunity to change all these different jobs. There's so many police jobs that you don't even know exist. And, I've pretty much fine-tuned my career now to exactly what I plan on doing with the rest of my career, which is intelligence-based policing. So
what were your goals when you were originally getting in? Like when I got into law enforcement, I knew there was two big things that I wanted to do: be on a TAC team and handle a dog. If I could do those two things, I'd be a happy man.
Yeah. So when I originally wanted to be a cop, I either wanted to be a canine handler or I wanted to just be like a trooper and just pull people over. And so I had started guiding my military career towards the end, and I'd worked with canine. Like I was like right next to their facility all the time. So I was canine training unofficially for almost a year. And then when I was my contract was about to end for the Air Force, I was going to extend for 2 years with the guarantee that I could go to canine. And it didn't happen. It just didn't work out. And so I was like, all right, screw it. I'll just go be a civilian cop. And so that's what I did. Never went after being a canine handler after that. Never became a trooper either, because my idea of police work changed dramatically once I was out there in the streets doing something. Like, why would I want to be out there writing tickets every day? Like, that's not police work. No offense, troopers and motors guys.
We love troopers,
right?
But I'm happy I don't have to do that.
They dress so well and they got nice fancy cars.
Yeah, I don't. Man, ticket riding is not why I got into this.
No, me either. I'm not here to make...
I actually have a pretty similar story to you. Not as crazy as some cop was a jerk and popped my basketball, but I grew up in a pretty high crime area. I had some positive interactions with law enforcement as a young kid, where they would drive by and, give us baseball cards or pop rocks or whatever. And that's kind of what opened my eyes to law enforcement. Then a home invasion suspect ended up in my backyard, and the whole SWAT team showed up, and I was like, oh my
Hell
God,
yeah.
these guys are awesome. You know, they look like superheroes. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I could see myself doing that when I get older. So what was it like going from a 40-man department to a 2,000-man department?
Freaking awesome. That's when like the skies opened up and I'm like, I could breathe. I didn't feel like I had somebody looking over my shoulder every 10 seconds. I got to be the type of cop I wanted to be. I felt lazier.
It's a big department.
Yeah.
Man. That's a big one.
I felt lazier because here where I was at, you ran the whole call. Like you take the information and then you start investigating. Like you run it up. And where I got to this larger department, you're going call to call to call. You're getting the information and then you're putting that in the report and you're done. You send that to a detective. And so for me, I just felt like I wasn't doing enough. So that's when I just decided I would ask my Sarge, like, hey, can I run with this call? And he's like, well, there's no calls holding in your beat. So yeah, if you want. He's like, but if you start getting calls stacking up, your team's going to get on you because now they're going to be handling calls in your beat while you're, trying to play detective. So
yeah, nobody wants to work next to that guy.
Yeah. So it's a balance. It's cool to run your calls and keep going with them. But if you're on a beat system like we were, and there's 3 or 4 calls holding in your beat, which usually is going to happen if you're the rookie, because you're going to get the crappy beat with all the calls. You don't have time to play detective. So you got to play that balance.
At that point, it seems like you kind of rotated where you're looking to go in law enforcement in the future. Did you have like moving to this new department? Did you look like, hey, in 5 years, this is where I want to be?
Yeah. And that changed all the time because I just kept learning more and more about what the capabilities of our department were. So when I first got over here, I had heard of zero tolerance. And I was like, what is that? And I see these guys dressed in, all black and the TAC uniforms and running in undercover vehicles with, patrol vehicles as supplements. And they're just going to an area and saturating it. And you just see traffic stops in this like 3-block radius and there's 16 vehicles pulled over. And you're just like, what the hell is happening over here? And there's just this huge presence. And I was like, that's awesome. I want to do that. And they're only going after violent crime and gang members and stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And so that's what I was trying to go towards. So, and their mission changed like somewhere towards like my 5th year mark. And my buddy from the police academy got the opportunity to go on our bicycle unit. And I was like, well, if my buddy's over there, I've never done bicycle cop stuff. And so I was like, let's go try to do that. And it was right next to a nice hood area. And I was like, we can get into some shit being bicycle cops. And oh my God, did we? I mean, we chased down a stolen car one time on a bike. Never been in a shooting up until I was on a bike. And then I got 3 different calls where we got shot at. I didn't shoot back. There's just too many people. But at the time, like here I am, never been involved in a shooting. And then I get on a bike as a bicycle cop.
What happened there?
Okay, so first one was there's a fight outside of a bar, huge crowd around. So we're coming up. We're just going to try to disperse it. A little old school method maybe of testing your pepper spray, being upwind and throwing it out there. But just as we are about to unass our bikes, pop, pop, pop. And then I hear, zoom, like, that sound. Oh, boy. And I'm like, oh, shit. So me and my partner, we duck down behind a car and we look up and I see the guy with the gun aimed. He's aimed at us, but he's not aiming at us, if that makes sense.
He's pointing in your direction.
Yeah, so
but
I think whoever he was trying to shoot was the same side as us. Well, the crowd's obviously running everywhere. And so I get my gun out, I punch out, and I'm looking to shoot and I can't. There's just too many people. And I was like, and then he stovepiped his gun. So I see he shoots towards us one more time. I'm kind of hiding behind the engine of this vehicle. And I peek up and I see him go to shoot and it's jammed. He was actually like movie style trying to shoot gangster, like sideways. And he limp wristed it and it stovepiped. So then he goes running. So now we're chasing after him. And he tries to dump the gun. Well, he does. He doesn't try. He dumps the gun under this vehicle. I see that happen. And he jumps into this other car, like an old Caprice classic. And he starts to take off, and I hear one of the sergeants that I actually had worked for prior. His last name's Salazar. Salazar's coming down. And he's like, I'm right here. Where do I go? Where should I go? He's like, he's coming up on scene. I was like, he's coming out of the lot right at you. And Johnny just bam, just nails this guy and pins him. And I'm like, beautiful. We go out, we get out, we grab his ass and cuff him up. And so there was that one. Another one, same.
Can you hit cars in Texas?
What's that?
Do they allow you to hit cars in Texas?
It just depends on the situation. I think in this particular instance, this car pulled out in front of Johnny. And so he hit him. Like, he didn't have a chance to stop. And that's just how it happened.
I didn't know if you guys were just like Georgia, where they just pit everything, crashing everybody.
No, we have a no pit policy, unless you're like a specialized unit and trained and all that stuff. So for us in patrol, no, you're not pitting. And so Johnny gets that guy. Then we get another shooting where, again, bicycle unit, we're all hanging out down by this one bar. Like, there's probably 10 of us on shift this night, maybe 12. And it's closing time. The bars had just let out. They actually had been out for a little bit. So it's probably like 2:10 in the morning. And it clears out by about 2:15, 2:20. So we're like, let's go back to the shop. Well, as we leave, we're stretched out. Like 12 bike officers took up an entire block. You know what I mean? As we're following behind each other, single file. Well, I'm at the very end. And as we're coming up to the intersection of the next block, there's this bar called Ojos Locos. And the next thing we hear is pop, 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 pop. And I'm like, oh shit. So I jump off. It was a guy had a gun and he's aiming it at this dude across the street. And I don't know if he got a round off or not. I can't remember that part. But as we're rolling up, he turns because the lead officer, the one in front of the single file line, had jumped off his bike because he sees the guy pointing a gun and was like, drop the gun, drop the gun. And he turns towards the officer and the officer just lit him up. 5 out of 6 shots hit the guy. So there was that one. And then the third one was at the same bar area that the first shooting happened.
Because his bicycle unit gets down.
I know, man. And back in the day, it used to be pretty wild. And then coming out of that one, there was a fight, and the guy lays down 3 shots at the cops. Me, Mendoza, I can't remember who the third guy was. And I don't think he was necessarily trying to hit us, but trying to keep us down and get the crowd to scramble so he could escape. Because his first shot was to break the glass at the bar, like the front of it. So he shoots that and then turns towards us and was like, bam, bam, bam. And we running through the crowd. We end up chasing after the wrong guy. Like, that tells you how chaotic it gets. We saw him. We thought we had the right person and we grabbed this dude and he turns out it was unrelated. We backtracked the video. I'm like, no, that's him. And they're like, nope, that wasn't him. Shit.
That poor guy.
I know. And I was positive it was him. if you would have been like, you bet your paycheck, I'm like, right now, double it. I'll bet you the month's worth of pay. I thought it was him. Same color clothes, same build, everything. Just wrong place, wrong time. But we got the guy eventually. But yeah.
Yeah, everybody thought bicycle police were dorks until they started having all those riots. And then everybody out there is a bicycle cop. It's like these guys are the front line of every riot across the country.
I'm still a part, like, because of my certifications and stuff. Anytime there's public order, like, I'm one of the people that has to respond. I just worked the RNC in Milwaukee as a bike patrol officer, or as a bike sergeant. So I was supervising a team. And then I worked the RNC in Cleveland in 2016 for bikes. So
how's that happen? Like, they
invite, so they'll invite your department. It's usually based on reputation. Where I'm at, they have a really good rep for their public order. It's been proven on the news a few times too. And like Seattle's probably what I call the cream of the crop when it comes to bike public order.
We've got a crash course in the St. Louis area for public order stuff.
And it works, man. You got those bike fences and the ability to clear out intersections fast. Seattle does it the best because they combine their grenadiers to throw smoke with their bike unit. So now you're like, okay, we need to take over this intersection. And they jump off their bike, they get behind the line, thump, 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 throw some smoke. Now the fence, everybody gets on the bikes, moves up into the smoke, gas masked up, and then they fence out. And once those smoke cans are done, now they've just taken over an intersection in like 8 seconds. And then they just keep moving that way.
I think, I don't know, Ferguson was probably the first huge example that I've ever seen of public order stuff like that, where it's just riot after riot after riot.
Yep.
And man, St. Louis has become like a big, that's a huge thing now. Every police department in the area has a mobile response team.
Yep. Mobile field force, mobile response team.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And we all train together, so everybody knows all the same commands, and it's all like a universal system. So, because that's something that they learned from Ferguson, is that you're going to be standing next to a guy you've never met before.
Yep.
From a department that you've never worked with before. So they have like a universal system that they do now. We implement bikes a lot less, but St. Louis City implements bikes pretty often.
Yeah.
I actually did some secondary with an organization and protected some Fox News guys during some of the riots, and St. Louis City's, they've got it down.
Yeah.
They should by now. It's between that one and then there's the Stockley trial that happened where they rioted and broke everything in St. Louis City. So they've done a pretty good job of kind of leading the area, and now we're way more prepared for the likelihood of something bad happening.
Yeah. Now that I've done both and seen, foot, hats and bats, and then seen bike, public order, and see the way, as long as you allow your people to do it to its full extent, like Seattle does, that there's nothing that competes with that. I mean, there's just nothing that can clear out an area like their bike unit does. And to watch them clear 6 blocks in under 2 minutes is, try doing that on foot. You're not doing that on foot, and it takes more bodies because you have to go intersection all the way across, building to building, and a bike is literally 3 or 4 people, one bike, and you're able to fence off an entire block a lot better.
Thanks for hanging in there to the end of the episode. I hope you're enjoying Erik's episode. If you can't tell, there's more from Erik. Until next week, I'll see you on the other side, boys.